Emily Carter stepped into La Bella Vita, the cozy Italian restaurant nestled in the heart of Seattle's bustling downtown district. On that crisp Friday evening in 2025, her first real night off after a grueling 18-month deployment overseas as a Navy SEAL. At 30 years old, she was a striking black woman with a body that turned heads curves sculpted from years of rigorous training, lithe yet powerful frame that exuded both grace and strength, her dark skin glowing under the soft ambient lights, and her tightly coiled hair pulled back into a simple ponytail that accentuated her sharp features and piercing brown eyes. She had chosen a simple black dress that hugged her figure just enough to feel feminine without compromising her mobility, paired with flat shoes that allowed for quick movement if needed. Old habits from her SEAL days dying hard. All she wanted was to blend into the civilian crowd, to savor a moment of normalcy after months of high-stakes operations in hostile territories, where every shadow could hide a threat and every decision meant life or death. The restaurant was alive with the hum of conversation, the clink of silverware against plates, and the rich aroma of garlic, basil, and simmering tomato sauce wafting from the open kitchen. Families gathered around large tables laden with pasta dishes, couples leaned in close over candlelit glasses of Chianti, and groups of friends laughed over shared antipasti. Emily selected a corner booth strategically positioned with a clear view of the entire dining room, her training instinctively guiding her to a spot where she could monitor entrances, exits, and potential choke points without drawing attention to herself. She slid into the seat, her back to the wall, and scanned the room once more before allowing herself to relax just a fraction, ordering her favorite chicken parmesan with a side of garlic bread and a glass of red wine to wash away the lingering dust of distant battlefields. As she waited for her meal, she let her mind drift to simpler times. Memories of her childhood in a tight-knit black community in Atlanta, where her grandmother's Sunday dinners had instilled in her a love for hearty Italian food. This cultural fusion felt like home, even far from it. But peace was fleeting. Her keen senses picked up on the escalating disturbance at the bar across the room, where three men in tailored suits, clearly professionals from some corporate gig, their ties loosened and faces flushed from too many drinks, were growing louder by the minute. The ringleader, a towering white man in his late 20s with a buzz cut and a smug grin, slammed his empty beer bottle down with a thud that echoed slightly, drawing uneasy glances from nearby patrons. His companions, one lanky with slicked back hair and the other stocky with a perpetual scowl, egged him on, their laughter sharp and mocking as they scanned the room for their next target. At first, it was just crude comments about the waitstaff, particularly the young Latina server, who hurried past them with forced politeness. But Emily's ears perked up when their voices carried racial undertones, whispers about those people taking jobs laced with slurs that made her stomach tighten. She had faced racism her whole life, from the subtle microaggressions in school to the overt hostility during her early military training, where some white recruits questioned if a black woman could handle the pressure of SEAL selection. But she had proven them wrong time and again, emerging as one of the elite few, her medals and commendations speaking louder than any bigot's words. Still, here in this supposedly progressive city, the old poisons lingered, and Emily forced herself to focus on her wine, sipping slowly as she reminded herself this was her night off. The men didn't stop there. Their attention shifted to a table nearby, where a young interracial couple, a white man in his early 20s with glasses and a nervous demeanor, and his black girlfriend, petite and dressed in a floral sundress, were trying to enjoy their date. The ringleader leaned over the bar, pointing subtly at them with his bottle, muttering something about mixing races that drew chuckles from his friends, their voices just loud enough to carry but deniable if confronted. Emily's jaw clenched. She could see the young woman's shoulders tense, her eyes darting uncomfortably as she whispered to her boyfriend, who placed a protective hand on hers, but looked equally uneasy, clearly not wanting to escalate things in public. The restaurant staff hovered nearby, a mix of concern and hesitation on their faces. The manager, an older Italian man with a mustache, wringing his hands behind the counter, perhaps weighing the risk of offending well-dressed customers who might be big tippers against the growing discomfort of others. Emily's training kicked in. She assessed the threats. The ringleader's broad shoulders suggested strength from gym sessions rather than real combat. The lanky one's unsteady stance indicated intoxication, impairing coordination, and the stocky one's aggressive posture screamed overcompensation. But it was the racial edge that gnawed at her, reminding her of incidents back home. Like the time in high school when a group of white boys had cornered her and her friends at a diner, spewing slurs until she stood her ground, her fists ready even then. She pushed the memory aside, focusing on her meal as it arrived. The steaming plate of chicken parmesan, a temporary distraction. Its crispy breading and melted cheese, a comfort she savored bite by bite. Yet the men's behavior worsened. Moved from the bar, sauntering toward the couple's table with predatory confidence, the ringleader leading the way. "Hey, sweetheart," he drawled at the young black woman, his voice dripping with false charm laced with condescension. "You look like you could use some real company. Ditch this loser and join us." His friend snickered, one adding, "Yeah, we know how to treat a girl like you, right?" The implication heavy with racial stereotypes that made Emily's blood boil. The boyfriend stood up halfway, his voice shaky but firm. "Please leave us alone. We're just trying to have dinner." But the ringleader ignored him, reaching out to brush the woman's arm, his touch lingering too long, invasive and unwanted, as she shrank back in her chair, her eyes wide with fear. The tension in the room thickened like fog rolling in from Puget Sound. Other diners shifted uncomfortably, some whispering among themselves, a few pulling out phones perhaps to record or call for help, but no one intervened yet. Emily's mind raced. She could feel the familiar surge of adrenaline, the same that had carried her through nighttime raids and close-quarters combat. But this was different. Civilian soil, where rules of engagement were murkier, where her actions as a black woman could be twisted into aggression by biased eyes. Still, her moral compass. Forged in the fires of justice, her parents had instilled activists who marched in the civil rights era demanded action. The men pressed on, the lanky one blocking the couple's exit from the table, his body language threatening as he leaned in close, whispering something Emily couldn't hear but could guess from the woman's paling face. The stocky one laughed uproariously, slapping his thigh as if this were all a joke, but the undercurrent was vicious, their words now openly laced with racial epithets. "Come on, don't act all uppity. We know your type loves the attention." The boyfriend tried to stand fully, but the ringleader shoved him back down with a casual push that looked playful but carried force, drawing gasps from nearby tables. Emily's heart pounded. She thought of her own experiences, the times she'd been followed in stores, profiled by police, or dismissed in meetings because of her skin, and how her SEAL training had given her the tools to rise above, but also the responsibility to protect those who couldn't. The manager finally approached, his voice tentative. "Gentlemen, please. You're disturbing the other guests. Maybe it's time to settle your bill." But the ringleader whirled on him, his face reddening. "Mind your business, old man. We're paying customers, and if you don't like it, maybe we take our money elsewhere. Maybe we review this dump online and say it's full of ... undesirables." The slur hung in the air, directed vaguely but pointedly at the diverse crowd, including Emily, who felt eyes flicker her way. The young woman at the table was trembling now, tears welling as she clutched her boyfriend's arm, whispering, "Let's just go." But the men blocked their path, turning the harassment into a blockade. Emily set down her fork deliberately, her meal half-eaten, the savory flavors turning bitter in her mouth. She couldn't ignore it anymore. The racial tension was a powder keg, and these men were lighting matches with every word, every touch. Rising slowly, her movements fluid and controlled, she smoothed her dress over her curvaceous hips, drawing a few admiring glances that she ignored. Her focus laser-sharp on the unfolding scene. As she approached, the men's laughter faltered slightly, their eyes landing on her first with appreciation for her beauty, then narrowing with suspicion as they registered her confident stride and the unyielding set of her jaw. The ringleader noticed her first, his smirk twisting into something uglier. "Well, look what we have here," another one, thinking she can play hero. "Stay out of it, girl. This ain't your fight." His use of girl was deliberate, diminishing, laced with the paternalistic racism she'd encountered too often. Emily stopped a few feet away, her voice steady and clear, cutting through the din like a knife. "I think you've had enough fun for one night. Let these people be and go back to your seats, or, better yet, leave." The lanky one stepped forward, his breath reeking of beer. "Who the hell are you to tell us what to do? Mind your own, or we'll make sure you regret it." The threat was veiled, but real, and Emily's mind flashed to training simulations where she disarmed opponents twice her size. But here, the stakes included not just physical safety, but the narrative how a black woman defending others might be painted as the aggressor in a police report or viral video. The stocky man chimed in, his voice booming. "Yeah, we don't take orders from ... people like you." The pause before people was pregnant with unspoken slurs, and the room grew quieter, patrons holding their breath as the confrontation escalated. Emily held her ground, her curvaceous form a pillar of defiance, her eyes locking onto each man in turn. Assessing weaknesses, the ringleader's slight sway from alcohol, the lanky's overextended stance, the stocky's clenched fists signaling impending violence. The young couple looked at her with a mix of hope and fear, the woman mouthing thank you silently as her boyfriend tried to pull her closer. But the men weren't backing down. The ringleader advanced a step, his hand twitching as if considering a grab, his words turning overtly racist. "You think you're tough, huh? Coming in here, acting all superior like your kind, hasn't ruined enough places already." The slur hit like a slap, echoing memories of Emily's deployment, where even in uniform, she'd faced doubt from allies because of her race, pushing her to excel harder to prove her worth tenfold. Tension crackled in the air, the manager dialing 911 discreetly behind the counter. But help was minutes away, minutes that could turn deadly if things spiraled. Emily's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the controlled rage of someone who'd survived worse. Her body coiled like a spring, ready to unleash if they made the first move. The lanky one reached out tentatively, as if to push her away, his fingers brushing the air near her shoulder, a prelude to contact that would cross the line irrevocably. Whispers rippled through the crowd, some supportive, others laced with bias. One older white woman murmuring, "She should just stay out of it. It's not her place," revealing the subtle racism that permeated even neutral observers. Emily's mind raced through scenarios, de-escalate verbally, or prepare for defense. But the men's eyes gleamed with alcohol-fueled bravado, their postures shifting to encircle her now, turning the quayside into a potential melee. The stocky man cracked his knuckles, sneering, "Last chance, lady, walk away before you get what's coming." The threat hung heavy, the racial undercurrent pushing the scene to a boiling point. Emily's resolve hardening as she stood tall, her beautiful, resilient form a beacon against the ugliness unfolding. The young woman at the table sobbed quietly, her fear palpable, while her boyfriend stood ready to jump in, though clearly outmatched. Emily's voice remained calm, but her words carried weight. "Touch anyone here, and you'll regret it, I promise you that." The ringleader laughed, a harsh bark that grated on nerves. but his eyes betrayed a flicker of uncertainty as he sized up her unyielding stance, the room teetering on the edge of chaos. Suddenly, the lanky one lunged forward, his hand aiming for her arm in a grab meant to intimidate, but Emily sidestepped instinctively, her training making the move seamless, heightening the tension as the men realized she wasn't bluffing. Gasps erupted from tables, phones raised to capture the moment, the air thick with anticipation of violence. The stocky man shoved a chair aside, closing in, his face contorted in rage. "You think you can stand up to us? Know your place." The overt racism ignited something deep in Emily, the cumulative weight of generations of struggle, from her ancestors' chains to her own battles for equality in the military fueling her determination not to let these bullies win. The manager shouted for everyone to calm down, but it was too late. The confrontation had reached its peak. Emily positioned perfectly to respond, her body a weapon honed by years of discipline, ready to defend not just the couple, but the dignity of all those marginalized by such hatred. As the ringleader raised his voice in a final taunt, spewing a vile epithet that silenced the room, Emily felt the point of no return, where words failed and action beckoned, her heart steady amid the storm. The young couple huddled together, the woman's eyes pleading with Emily, who nodded subtly, assuring them without words that she had this. But the men pressed on, their encirclement tightening, the lanky one recovering from his missed grab too. Try again, this time with more force, his fingers grazing her sleeve, sending a jolt through her. Emily's response was measured, a warning twist that sent him stumbling back. But it only enraged them further. The stocky one, charging like a bull, his fist cocked for a swing that could escalate everything into a full brawl. Patrons scrambled, some fleeing toward the exits, others frozen in shock. The racial dynamics amplifying the fear. Would the police believe a black woman's account over 3 white men's? Emily knew the risks, had lived them, but retreat wasn't in her nature. She dodged the punch effortlessly, her curvaceous figure moving with lethal grace, countering with a verbal barb. "Big mistake, boys, back off now." The ringleader, seeing his friend falter, joined the fray, his massive frame barreling toward her, the clash imminent, the tension at its zenith as the restaurant descended into pandemonium. Screams echoed, dishes clattered to the floor as tables were bumped, and Emily braced for impact, her mind clear, her body primed. The high traw of racial injustice and personal valor colliding in this unexpected arena. Yet even as the chaos peaked, Emily's thoughts flickered to strategy: use their aggression against them, minimize harm, protect the innocent, her SEAL ethos guiding her through the storm. The lanky one recovered, flanking her left, while the stockies circled right, their coordinated attack revealing a pack mentality born of privilege and prejudice, their slurs flying like daggers. "We'll teach you a lesson you won't forget." The young boyfriend tried to intervene, standing up to pull his girlfriend away, but the ringleader shoved him hard, sending him crashing into the table, plates shattering, wine spilling like blood. The woman screamed, her voice piercing the din, and that was the breaking point for Emily. No more observation, no more warnings. She moved with purpose, interposing herself between the men and the couple, her presence a wall of defiance, her voice booming. Enough. The word carried the authority of someone who'd commanded teams in war zones. But the men, blinded by booze and bias, didn't heed it. The lanky one swinging wildly, his fist whistling past her ear as she ducked, the near miss ratcheting the suspense. Countering, she grabbed his wrist in a hold that twisted just enough to elicit a yelp, but released quickly, not wanting to escalate prematurely, though the action drew bloodthirsty glares from his companions. The stocky man roared, charging. Again, his shoulder aimed like a ram, forcing Emily to pivot, her dress swirling around her legs, her beauty contrasting sharply with the ugliness of the moment. Patrons gasped, one calling out, "Stop it!" But the racial divide was evident. Some white diners looked away, uncomfortable with the confrontation, while others of color nodded in silent support, knowing the stakes all too well. The manager, phone in hand, yelled that police were coming. But the men laughed it off. "By the time they get here, we'll have handled this." The threat implied violence, not just physical, but systemic, the kind where connections and skin color tilted justice. Emily's breath came steady, her curves belying the steel beneath, as she parried another grab, her mind calculating angles, exits, potential weapons, a fork on the table, a chair for leverage. The ringleader, frustrated, spat a final slur, his face inches from hers. "You don't belong here, go back to where you came from." The words stung, echoing centuries of exclusion, but they also fueled her, reminding her why she fought for equality, for protection, for a world where a black woman could dine in peace. As his hand shot out to shove her, the tension snapped like a taut wire, the high traw reaching fever pitch, Emily ready to unleash the storm within. Her intervention no longer optional but imperative in the face of such blatant racism and danger. The room held its breath, the clash inevitable, the outcome hanging by a thread as Emily stood firm, a symbol of resilience against oppression. The air in La Bella Vita hung thick with unspoken fury as Emily Carter stood her ground. Her curvaceous black frame, a defiant silhouette against the backdrop of overturned chairs and shattered glass from the initial scuffle. The three men encircled her now, their faces twisted in a cocktail of alcohol-induced rage and deep-seated prejudice. The ringleader's eyes narrowing into slits as he sized her up, his massive build casting a long shadow over the polished wooden floor. "You really think you can take us on, huh?" he snarled, his voice a low growl that carried the weight of entitlement. The kind forged in boardrooms where diversity was a buzzword, but never a reality. Emily's heart beat steadily, her SEAL training transforming fear into fuel. She had faced insurgents in dusty Afghan villages, navigated minefields under cover of night, and led teams through ambushes where one wrong move meant death. This was child's play by comparison. Yet the racial venom added a layer of complexity, turning a simple altercation into a battle for dignity. The lanky one, recovering from his earlier stumble, circled to her left, his slick-back hair disheveled, breath ragged as he spat, "We don't back down from your kind. This city's gone to hell because of people like you." The slur was blatant now, no longer veiled, echoing off the walls and drawing sharp intakes of breath from the scattered patrons who remained. Some huddled behind tables, others frozen in place like statues in a museum of modern injustice. Emily's mind flashed to her recruitment days, when a white instructor had whispered doubts about her fitting in with the team, only for her to outperform everyone in Bud's training. Her body strong, curvaceous, and unyielding, proving that resilience wasn't color-coded. She shifted her weight subtly, her hips swaying just enough to maintain balance, her dress clinging to her form as she prepared for the inevitable escalation. The stocky man lunged first this time, his scowl deepening into a mask of hatred as he swung a wild haymaker aimed at her jaw, his fist cutting through the air with the force of someone used to getting his way through brute intimidation. Emily anticipated it, her years of close-quarters combat drills kicking in like muscle memory. She ducked low, feeling the whoosh of air above her head, countered with a precise elbow strike to his solar plexus. Not hard enough to incapacitate, but sufficient to double him over, gasping for breath. "That's one warning," she said calmly, her voice a steady anchor in the storm, but inside, the racial barbs stung like salt in old wounds, memories of being pulled over for driving while black during her shore leaves. or the anonymous notes in her locker questioning her promotions as affirmative action handouts. The ringleader roared in response, charging forward like a bull in a china shop, his broad shoulders barreling toward her midsection in an attempt to tackle her to the ground. Emily sidestepped with fluid grace, her curvaceous legs pivoting on the balls of her feet, using his momentum against him. She hooked her arm under his and twisted, sending him crashing into a nearby empty table, where plates of uneaten pasta flew into the air like confetti from a disastrous party. The crash reverberated through the restaurant, mingling with cries of alarm from the patrons. One elderly Asian couple shielding their grandchild under the table while whispering prayers in Mandarin. But the lanky one wasn't idle. He recovered quickly, grabbing a nearby wine bottle from an abandoned table and brandishing it like a club. His eyes wild with a mix of fear and bigotry. "You'll pay for that, you uppity," he began, the epithet cut short as Emily disarmed him in a blur, her hand snapping out to wrench the bottle free, twisting his wrist in a joint lock that forced him to his knees with a yelp of pain. She released immediately, not wanting to cause permanent damage. But the message was clear. She was in control, her training a shield against their chaos. Yet the men didn't yield. The stocky one, winded but furious, staggered to his feet, clutching his side as he hurled another insult. "Think you're some kind of hero? Heroes don't look like you, they're real Americans." The words were a dagger, twisting the knife of exclusion that Emily had felt since childhood, growing up in Atlanta, where history books glossed over the contributions of black soldiers, forcing her to seek out stories of the Tuskegee Airmen and Buffalo Soldiers on her own. She circled slowly, keeping all three in her peripheral vision, her breathing controlled through techniques learned in yoga sessions adapted for combat stress relief. The ringleader, shaking off the impact from the table, wiped a trickle of blood from his lip, likely from biting it during the fall, and advanced again. This time more cautiously, feinting left before swinging right with a hook punch. Emily blocked it with her forearm, the impact jarring but absorbed, and retaliated with a knee to his thigh, targeting the femoral nerve to numb his leg temporarily, causing him to buckle slightly. "Stand down," she commanded, her tone authoritative, echoing the cadence of her drill instructors. But the racial undercurrent fueled their persistence, turning the fight into a proxy war for their fragile egos. A young waiter hiding behind the bar peeked out with wide eyes, his phone recording the scene surreptitiously, capturing not just the physical blows, but the verbal assaults that laid bare the men's prejudices. The lanky one, nursing his wrist, scrambled back up and tried a different tactic, grabbing a chair and swinging it wildly like a makeshift battering ram, the legs whistling through the air toward Emily's head. She dropped low, rolling to the side in a maneuver straight from her evasion training, her dress hiking up slightly to reveal toned thighs that spoke of endless ruck marches and swims in full gear. Coming up behind him, she swept his legs with a low kick, sending him sprawling face first onto the floor, his nose crunching against the tile with a sickening thud. Blood pooled beneath him, not from her strike, but from his own clumsiness. Yet, he howled accusations. "She's attacking us. This black bitch is crazy." The slur exploded like a grenade, shattering any remaining pretense of civility, and Emily felt a surge of righteous anger, thinking of her fallen comrades, black, white, Latino, who had bled together overseas, their bonds transcending race in the crucible of war. The stocky man, seeing his friend down, charged anew, this time aiming a series of rapid punches, his fists a blur of desperation. Emily parried the first two, her arms moving like pistons, and on the third, she caught his arm in an armbar, twisting just enough to force him to the ground without breaking bones. He landed with a grunt, his face pressed against the cold floor, muttering curses laced with racial venom. "You people always play the victim. Now, look what you've done." Emily released him, stepping back to create distance, her curvaceous body glistening with a light sheen of sweat under the restaurant's warm lights, her beauty undiminished by the fray. But the ringleader wasn't done. He lumbered forward once more, his legs still numb, but his hatred burning bright. Grabbing a fork from the debris as an improvised weapon, Jabameli disarmed him effortlessly, knocking the fork away with a chop too, his wrist following up with a palm strike to his chest that sent him staggering back into the bar, bottles rattling and falling in a cascade of glass and liquor. The smell of spilled whiskey mingled with the lingering garlic, creating a nauseating haze that choked the air. Patrons screamed, one woman fainting into her husband's arms, while a group of college students in the corner debated intervening. Their phones out, but hands hesitant, the racial dynamics making them question if helping. Emily would label them as troublemakers. The young interracial couple, the initial targets. Watched in awe from their appended table, the black woman clutching her boyfriend's arm, whispering, "She's saving you, she's like a guardian angel." But Emily knew angels didn't exist in real life, only preparation and resolve. The lanky one, bloodied but resilient, crawled to his feet and attempted a sneak attack from behind, wrapping his arms around her waist in a bear hug meant to lift and slam her. Emily countered instinctively, stomping on his instep with her heel hard enough to crack bone, then elbowing his ribs, feeling the give of cartilage as he released her with a wheeze. He collapsed again, curling into a fetal position, his bravado. Shattered tears mixing with blood as he whimpered, "This isn't fair, you're not supposed to fight back." The irony burned. How many times had black women been told to know their place, to endure silently while injustice raged? The stocky man, ever the opportunist, used the distraction to grab a napkin holder and hurl it at her head, like a projectile, the metal glinting under the lights. Emily dodged, the holder smashing against the wall behind her, scattering napkins like snowflakes. She closed the distance in 2 strides, delivering a front kick to his knee that buckled it sideways, sending him down for the count with a cry of agony. "Stay down," she warned, her voice laced with finality. But the ringleader, the most stubborn of the trio, pushed off the bar and came at her one last time, his fists raised in a boxer stance, perhaps from some amateur fights in his youth. He threw a jab-cross combination, but Emily weaved through it like water, her movements a dance of precision honed in sparring sessions with SEAL teammates who outweighed her by pounds but never outskilled her. She countered with an uppercut to his chin, snapping his head back, followed by a hook to the body that folded him over. As he gasped, she swept his legs, dropping him to the floor, where he lay groaning, the fight finally draining from his eyes. The entire sequence from the first lunge to the last fall unfolded in exactly 15 seconds, a testament to her elite training, but to the onlookers, it felt like an eternity. Each move etched in slow motion against the canvas of racial tension that had amplified every strike. The restaurant fell into a stunned silence, broken only by the distant wail of approaching sirens and the labored breathing of the defeated men. Emily stood tall, her curvaceous form untouched save for a few wrinkles. In her dress, her dark skin radiant under the lights as if the confrontation had only invigorated her. She turned immediately to the young couple, helping them to their feet with gentle hands, her voice soft. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" The black woman nodded shakily, tears streaming down her face as she embraced Emily impulsively. "Thank you. You didn't have to, but you did. They were saying such horrible things, ... about us, about me." Her boyfriend, rubbing his shoulder from the earlier shove, added, "I've never seen anything like that. You're incredible." Emily smiled modestly, downplaying it, just doing what anyone should. But inside, she knew it wasn't that simple. As a black woman in uniform, she'd learned that anyone often meant those with privilege, while others risked everything to step up. The manager emerged from behind the counter, his face ashen, applauding tentatively as other patrons joined in. A smattering of claps that grew into thunderous applause. One black server approached, whispering, "Sister, you just made my year. Those guys have been eyeing me all night with that same crap." Emily nodded, solidarity in her eyes, but the victory was bittersweet. The men's racism hadn't vanished with their defeat, lingered in the air like smoke as the police burst through the doors. Badges flashing and hands on holsters, the scene shifted from chaos to investigation. Officer Jamal Thompson, a black cop with 10 years on the force, took the lead, his eyes scanning the room before landing on Emily with a mix of recognition and respect. He'd seen her type before: military precision in civilian clothes. "What happened here?" he asked, notepad ready. The ringleader, still on the floor, pointed accusingly. "She attacked us. We were just talking. And this woman went psycho." But the lies crumbled under the weight of evidence. Security cameras had captured everything, from the initial harassment to the racial slurs and the men's first aggressive moves. Witnesses came forward in droves: a Hispanic family describing the men's leers at their daughter, an Indian businessman recounting overheard epithets about foreigners taking jobs, and the elderly Asian couple detailing how the trio had mocked their accents earlier. Emily gave her statement calmly, detailing each action as self-defense, her composure a stark contrast to the men's blubbering. "They initiated physical contact after verbal threats laced with racial bias," she explained, her words measured, drawing from legal briefings on rules of engagement. Officer Thompson nodded, reviewing the footage on his tablet. "This is clear-cut assault on their part. Justified response on yours." The men were cuffed, protesting all the way, their slurs turning to pleas as reality set in. But the aftermath rippled deeper as news crews arrived, tipped off by social media videos already going viral. Emily's identity began to leak. Petty Officer Emily Carter, Navy SEAL, decorated for valor and classified ops. Reporters swarmed, questions flying. How does it feel to be a black woman hero in today's America? She deflected, focusing on the victims, but the story exploded, sparking debates on race, gender, and heroism. Online, trolls spewed hate, calling her actions reverse racism, while supporters hailed her as a symbol of empowerment. Back at base the next day, her CO pulled her aside. "Carter, you handled that like a pro, but watch the media. They twist things." She nodded, knowing the double standard. White male SEALs got parades. She got scrutiny. The three men faced charges, their careers crumbling. The ringleader fired from his tech firm for violating inclusivity policies. The others blacklisted in their industries. Months later, Emily testified at their trial, her presence in the courtroom a quiet force, the judge commending her restraint. The young couple reached out, becoming friends, sharing stories of their own brushes with prejudice. Emily reflected on it all during a solo run along the Seattle waterfront, her body moving with the same grace that had won the day, realizing that those 15 seconds weren't just about physical dominance, they were a stand against the systemic rot that allowed such men to thrive unchecked. The incident inspired self-defense classes tailored for women of color, funded by donations from the viral fame, and Emily volunteered anonymously, teaching moves that empowered without escalating. Yet, she never sought the spotlight, preferring the shadows where true warriors operated, her curvaceous form a reminder that strength came in all shades. As the sun set over the Sound, she felt a quiet peace, knowing she'd turned a night of hatred into a beacon of hope, one precise strike at a time. The ripple effects continued. Community forums buzzed with discussions on bystander intervention. Schools incorporated the story into anti-bullying curricula, emphasizing how racial microaggressions escalated to violence. Emily received letters from young black girls aspiring to join the military, their words fueling her deployments ahead. The restaurant renovated, adding a mural depicting unity, with Emily's silhouette as the centerpiece, anonymous but iconic. Even the men serving time underwent mandatory bias training, one reportedly expressing remorse in a letter that found its way to her. "I was wrong about everything." She forgave, but didn't forget, using the experience to advocate quietly within the Navy for better diversity programs. Years on, the 15 seconds became legend, a tale told in whispers over dinners, reminding all that courage wasn't about size or color. It was about standing tall when the world pushed you down. In the days following the chaotic showdown at La Bella Vita, the echoes of that fateful Friday evening in 2025 reverberated far beyond the confines of the Seattle restaurant, weaving a tapestry of consequences that touched lives in unexpected ways and ignited broader conversations about race, justice, and heroism in America. Emily Carter, the 30-year-old black Navy SEAL, whose curvaceous figure and unyielding resolve had turned the tide in those blistering 15 seconds, found herself thrust into a whirlwind she had never sought, waking up the next morning in her modest apartment overlooking Elliott Bay. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, her dark skin still flawless, her coiled hair tousled from a restless night, her body aching slightly from the exertion but otherwise unscathed. She had hoped for anonymity, a quiet return to her duties at the naval base. But her phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, viral videos of the incident racking up millions of views, news outlets clamoring for interviews, and messages from strangers praising her as a real-life superhero. Yet, for Emily, it wasn't about glory. It was about the principle she'd upheld since enlisting the duty to protect the vulnerable, especially when bigotry reared its ugly head. She brewed a strong cup of coffee, the aroma grounding her as she scrolled through the footage, wincing at the racial slurs captured crystal clear, reminders of why she'd fought so hard to break barriers in a male-dominated, often racially charged field like the SEALs. The three assailants now identified as tech executive Ryan Caldwell, the ringleader, software engineer Alex Donovan, the lanky one, and sales manager Brett Harlan, the stocky man, woke to a far grimmer reality in holding cells at the Seattle Police Department. Ryan, nursing a bruised ego and a swollen jaw, paced his cell, his tailored suit rumpled and stained with dried pasta sauce, muttering about unfair treatment while his lawyer scrambled to post bail. Alex, with a bandaged nose and a fractured instep, sat hunched over, replaying the humiliation in his mind, his once slick hair matted with sweat and blood. Brett, clutching his tender knee, groaned as he realized the gravity. Their arrests for assault, battery, hate crimes enhancements, due to the recorded slurs and disturbing the peace carried potential prison time and career-ending fallout. As dawn broke, their phones confiscated, but later returned, flooded with notifications to HR's emails from their respective companies initiating investigations. Social media backlash, labeling them as racist thugs, and family members distancing themselves in shame. Ryan's wife, a marketing consultant, filed for separation that very morning, citing his toxic behavior as the final straw in a marriage strained by his unchecked prejudices. Alex's startup colleagues, a diverse team he'd often belittled behind closed doors, voted unanimously to oust him from the board. Brett, whose sales quotas relied on networking, found his contacts ghosting him, whispers of his actions spreading like wildfire through industry chats. Meanwhile, at the naval base, Emily reported for a routine briefing, her uniform crisp and her demeanor professional, but her commanding officer, Captain Elena Vasqueza, Latina veteran who'd mentored Emily through the grueling SEAL pipeline, pulled her aside in a private office overlooking the Puget Sound. "Carter, that video's everywhere. Vasquez said, her eyes sharp but approving. You handled it textbook minimal force, protected civilians. But brass is watching. They love the PR for diversity recruitment, but hate the spotlight on ops security. Emily nodded, explaining how the racial taunts had escalated the threat. Drawing parallels to microaggressions she'd faced in training, like being assigned extra PT under the guise of building resilience while white recruits skated by. Vasquez shared her own stories of overcoming bias in the ranks, forging a bond that strengthened Emily's resolve. By midday, the Navy's public affairs team issued a statement commending her actions as exemplary of service values. Carefully avoiding details of her classified missions to maintain operational secrecy, Emily declined personal interviews, instead channeling media requests toward organizations like the NACP and local anti-hate groups, turning the attention into advocacy. The young interracial couple, Mia Thompson, the black woman, and her boyfriend, Ethan Hayes, emerged from the ordeal transformed. Mia, a 22-year-old graphic designer, had spent the night in tears, replaying the grab on her arm and the slurs that cut deeper than any physical bruise. Ethan, a software intern, felt guilty for not intervening sooner. His nervousness in the moment was a source of self-doubt. But Emily's heroism inspired them. They reached out via a mutual contact at the restaurant, meeting her for coffee at a quiet cafe near the waterfront. Over lattes and pastries, Mia hugged Emily tightly, her voice trembling. "You didn't just save us, you showed me I don't have to shrink myself anymore." They shared stories, Mia, of growing up in a predominantly white suburb where she was often the token black friend. Ethan, of his privilege blinding him to everyday racism until dating Mia opened his eyes. Emily listened, offering advice from her own journey. Strength isn't about never feeling fear. It's about acting despite it. The meeting sparked a friendship. Mia designed a digital campaign highlighting bystander intervention, featuring anonymized clips from the incident, while Ethan volunteered at a community center, teaching conflict resolution to at-risk youth, emphasizing how silence enables hate. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the case against the three men gained national traction, becoming a flashpoint in discussions about accountability for casual racism. In the King County Courthouse, under the stern gaze of Judge Amelia Chenon, Asian American jurist known for her no-nonsense rulings, the preliminary hearing revealed damning evidence, high-definition security footage showing the men's escalating aggression, audio capturing slurs like "know your place" and "your kind," and forensic reports confirming bruises on Mia's arm from Ryan's grip. Witnesses testified in waves, a Somali immigrant waiter describing how the men had mocked his accent earlier, a transgender patron recounting veiled threats about freaks ruining society, painting a picture of habitual bigotry. Emily took the stand composedly, her curvaceous form in civilian attire drawing admiring whispers. But her testimony focused on facts. "I intervened only after physical contact. My actions were defensive, calibrated to neutralize without excess." The defense attorneys tried to spin it as mutual combat, alleging Emily's military background made her the aggressor. But cross-examination exposed their client's histories, Ryan's prior HR complaints for discriminatory remarks, Alex's deleted social media posts with white supremacist memes, Brett's bar fight record involving racial altercations. The judge denied bail reduction, citing flight risk and community safety, sending the men back to cells where reflection or resentment awaited. Public reaction polarized the nation. On social media, hashtag Emily Carter Hero trended alongside hashtag Stand Against Hate, with celebrities like a prominent black actress retweeting the video and donating to Emily's chosen charities. Support groups for women of color in STEM fields organized webinars, using the incident as a case study on navigating bias. Conversely, alt-right forums decried it as woke overreach. tasing Emily with fabricated claims about her service record, forcing the Navy to bolster her security. Protests erupted outside the courthouse. On one side, diverse crowds chanting for justice, waving signs like "racism isn't free speech." On the other, a smaller group of counter-protesters claiming reverse discrimination, their rhetoric echoing the men's slurs. Emily watched from afar. Attending a therapy session mandated by her CO2 processed the trauma not from the fight, but from the resurfaced memories of racism. Like the time a superior officer questioned her promotion as diversity quota filler. The therapist, a black psychologist specializing in military personnel, helped her unpack it. Your power threatens their fragility. That's why they lash out. Professionally, the men crumbled. Ryan's tech firm, a Silicon Valley darling, issued a scathing press release terminating him for violating their zero-tolerance policy on hate speech. His stock options forfeited, and his reputation in tatters. He attempted a countersuit against the restaurant for negligent security, but it was dismissed swiftly, leaving him jobless and facing mounting legal fees. Alex, the engineer, saw his startup implode. Investors pulled funding after the video surfaced, citing toxic culture, and he relocated to a small town, working menial jobs while attending court-ordered anger management classes where facilitators challenged his ingrained biases through role-playing scenarios. Brett's sales career evaporated. His company blacklisted him industry-wide, and he ended up in a halfway house post-sentencing, mandated to speak at high schools about the consequences of prejudice. His talks awkward but gradually sincere as he confronted letters from victims of similar harassment. For the restaurant, La Bella Vita, the incident became a turning point. Manager Giovanni Rossi, the Italian immigrant who'd hesitated initially, overhauled policies, mandatory de-escalation training for staff, partnerships with local diversity organizations, and a safe space initiative offering free meals to hate crime survivors. Business boomed, not from morbid curiosity, but genuine support. Patrons left tips earmarked for anti-racism charities, and a mural on the exterior wall depicted stylized figures of unity. Emily's silhouette central but faceless to honor her privacy. Rossi personally thanked her with a lifetime free pass. But Emily used it sparingly, preferring quiet home-cooked meals where she experimented with fusing Italian recipes with Southern soul food from her Atlanta roots chicken parmesan with collard greens, a metaphor for her blended identity. 6 months later, the trial concluded with guilty pleas to reduce charges, assault with hate crime enhancements, community service, and probation. Ryan received 18 months in a minimum security facility, emerging, humbled, volunteering at a racial justice nonprofit upon release. His transformation sparked by prison library books on civil rights history. Alex served house arrest, using the Time to Code an app for reporting bias incidents, donating proceeds to the ACLU. Brett, sentenced 2 weekends in jail plus restitution, rebuilt his life as a counselor for at-risk men, drawing from his downfall to prevent others. Their apologies, read in court, varied in authenticitarians tearful, Alex's analytical, Brett's gruff, but each acknowledged the harm, with Ryan specifically addressing Emily. Your strength exposed my weakness. I'm sorry for the pain I caused. Emily's life evolved, too. Promoted to Senior Chief Petty Officer, she led training modules incorporating the incident, teaching recruits about applying skills in civilian contexts while navigating racial dynamics. She deployed again to a classified location, her team relying on her tactical acumen and high-stakes ops, but upon return, she mentored young black women aspiring to special forces, hosting virtual Q&As where she shared unvarnished truths. The uniform doesn't erase bias, but it equips you to fight it. Personally, she dated sporadically, finding solace in a fellow veteran who understood her world. Their relationship was built on mutual respect rather than hero worship. Mia and Ethan, married a year later, inviting Emily as maid of honor. The wedding toast celebrated her not just for that night, but for inspiring their activism. Mia now ran a nonprofit for interracial couples. Ethan developed AI tools to detect online hate speech. Broader impacts rippled outward. Universities integrated the case into sociology curricula, analyzing how intersectionality amplified the event. Emily's Black womanhood intersecting with her military status. Documentaries streamed on platforms, one focusing on Black women in the military, featuring Emily's anonymized insights. Legislation in Washington state stiffened penalties for hate-motivated assaults in public spaces, dubbed the Carter Clause. Informally, community programs flourished, self-defense workshops for marginalized groups, funded by viral donations where instructors emulated Emily's techniques. Even pop culture nodded. A comic book series featured a character inspired by her, a curvaceous Black operative battling injustice, empowering young readers. Years passed, and on a rainy Seattle evening in 2030, Emily revisited La Bella Vita, now a landmark. The plaque honoring the guardian of that night gleamed, and as she sat in her old booth, a young Black girl approached shyly. "Are you her? The one who stood up?" Emily smiled, signing a napkin. "We all can be." The girl beamed, clutching it like treasure. A new generation inspired. Emily reflected on the journey from deployment scars to that 15-second stand, the racial battles fought and won, the lives altered. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Prejudice persisted, but her actions had chipped away at it, proving one woman's courage could spark a movement. As she left, the rain washing the streets clean, Emily felt at peace, her legacy not in headlines, but in the quiet strength she ignited in others.